Week 16 of the fantasy baseball season. Here's a few hitters I would sell this week. The first hitter, Luis Garcia of the Washington Nationals. It's been a great year for Luis Garcia, and he's been a big waiver wire pickup in the last month of the year on the season. 19 home runs, 64 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 42 runs scored, a 282 average, and a 313 on base. So he's an early count swinger, is Luis Garcia. He's showing a lot of power, and we know this national team, one of the best offenses in all the major leagues here. So Luis Garcia, he's going out there and definitely having a breakout season, but I think he's playing over his head a little bit. I know he's in a lineup with great hitters like James Wood, C.J. Abrams, who have monster years, and he's been the third best hitter in this lineup. In the last month of the year, he's on a tear, 12 home runs, 27 RBIs, 19 runs scored, a stolen base, a 326 average, and a 363 on-base percentage. So he's playing great baseball, qualifies at first and second, and he's really taking advantage of being in a good lineup like this. Like I said, batting second and getting a lot of good pitches to hit. July 1st at Boston, 1 for 4, run 2 RBIs. July 3rd versus Pittsburgh, 2 for 4, 2 homers, 3 RBIs. July 4th versus the Pirates, 0 for 3. And July 5th versus the Pirates, 2 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs. Like I said, he's playing way over his head of late. The last 2 weeks, he's got 9 home runs in that time with 18 RBIs as well, hitting .415 with 12 runs scored. So it's not sustainable, the level he's at, is Garcia, especially the power to hit 9 home runs in his last 41 at-bats. That's a crazy stat right now, and he's been ranked the number 1 player in fantasy baseball in the last 2 weeks with those numbers. So right now, well, he's white hot, hitting the cover off the ball, driving in a lot of runs and hitting home runs. Garcia, definitely a hitter I would sell this week. The next hitter, Xavier Edwards of the Miami Marlins. Edwards, he's been on this list a decent amount this season, and he's another guy this year that I think he's definitely playing over his head, is Edwards. Even though his numbers overall, he's pretty much going to give you runs scored, stolen bases, a good average and on base, even though I don't even think this average is going to stay at 300 on the year. 6 home runs, 35 RBIs, 13 stolen bases, a 49 run scored, a 302 average, 387 on base. In the last 2 weeks, he's gotten the average back up, no homers, 9 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 6 runs scored, a 400 average, and a 491 on base. So like I said, Xavier Edwards, he's pretty much a 2-3 category player at best. The average has been dropping slowly over the last few weeks here, and I got it back up the last couple weeks is Edwards. The power is non-existent, only 6 home runs on the year. And even the stolen bases, yeah, he'll get 20, 25 stolen bases, but nowadays there's a lot of guys that steal a lot of bases with the rule change a couple years ago. July 2nd at the Rockies, 0 for 2, 2 RBIs. July 3rd at the A's, 0 for 2, a run, 2 RBIs. July 4th at the A's, 1 for 3, an RBI in that one. And July 5th at the A's, 2 for 4. So this week, Seattle is coming in. They're a good pitching staff. And I think Edwards took advantage a little bit over the last week with great matchups at the Rockies and at the A's, where those pitching staffs aren't really that good. And also as well, like I said, right now is definitely a good time to sell him with the average over 300 barely. Like I said, you're not going to get power, you're not going to get RBIs. He's going to steal the bases, obviously, as Edwards, but just not at that elite level, top tier stolen base type of guy. So with those factors and good versatility at second and short, I think you could get a good starting pitcher in a deal for Xavier Edwards. And like I said, I know the Marlins team, they're playing great of late, but they just took advantage of 2 good matchups, and we'll see how Edwards fares with a tougher matchup coming up to start this week versus the Mariners coming into town. Next hitter, Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins. Buxton, we know he's always going to have power. We know he's one of the more elite power hitters in the league, but now a hip injury is kicking in, and he aggravated it in yesterday's ball game, is Byron Buxton, and that's always been the issue with him, is injuries. When healthy, we know he's a 30 to 35 home run type of play, and already this season, 25 home runs, 45 RBIs, 57 runs scored, 7 stolen bases, a 271 average, and a 328 on base percentage. So the last couple seasons, he's gotten that average up to go with the powers, Byron Buxton. And the last month, he's definitely been on a tear as well. 7 homers, 17 RBIs, 16 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 313 average, and a 356. But now aggravating that hip. We know last week he missed 4 games with the injury, and then he came back July 4th. He played in that one, and then July 5th in yesterday's game aggravated the hip. So who knows what the diagnosis is going to be for sure with Byron Buxton. But once that hip goes, It's an injury that takes a while to heal, depending how bad he hurt. June 27th versus the Rockies, 0-4. June 28th versus the Rockies, 0-4. July 4th, he returned after he missed those games with the injury at the Yankees, 1-3, run 2 RBIs. And July 5th, before he exited the game with the injury, 1-1. So he's having a great year. Obviously, is Byron Buxton. He's their best player on this Minnesota Twin team. And for him to go down with injury and now not knowing his status, if I'm the Buxton owner, I'm putting him on the trade block right away and trying to trade him for something pretty solid. I'm not going to dump him for anything, but like I said, with the injury history with Buxton, we're missing a lot of games pretty much year after year. Besides last season, it was one of his more healthier seasons in his MLB career. Definitely someone I would consider to sell this week. I know the power numbers are legit, already 25 home runs, and the All-Star break is only next week. So with those factors, yeah, it's a 50-50 type of thing. But with his injuries throughout his career and also the hip, definitely a delicate type of injury as well, where you can't run, field, or hit well if you got a bad injury like that. Definitely someone to consider selling this week. The next hitter, Dansby Swanson of the Chicago Cubs. I had him on the list last week, and then Swanson once again went out there with 2 monster games in a row during the week, where in those 2 games, 5 home runs and 11 RBIs. But Swanson's been a hot and cold hitter all season long. It seems like 2 series this whole season got him hot. A few weeks ago at the New York Mets, where he had 15 RBIs in a 4-game series, and then this San Diego series, and last week where he had the 5 home runs and 11 RBIs. But besides that, he hasn't done much all season long. So in those 2 series all season, that almost was half his RBIs, where Swanson had 26 RBIs in the 2 series, where on the year 16 homers, 57 RBIs, 56 runs scored, 10 stolen bases, a 207 average, and a 295 on base. In the last month, 9 home runs, 29 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 22 runs scored, a 271 average, and a 323 on base. So like I said, in the last month, all his stats came from that Mets series and the Padres series. In the last 2 weeks, all his stats came there as well. 8 homers, 26 RBIs, 13 runs scored, a 320 average. So he's white hot right now as Dansby Swanson. Like I said, 2 series made his numbers for the season. I know he's going to be a guy that's going to hit 25, 30 home runs when all said and done. But obviously, to come off big games like that, where it's definitely something we don't see a lot in the major leagues, he's definitely a player I would sell high this week. Like I said, to come off games like that, where he was a guy hitting below the Mendoza line all season long, it's definitely a little bit fluky, even though, like I said, I know he's got legit power, Swanson, but also he's a guy that could really go back into that slump pretty quickly, where he wasn't hitting much of the year. June 30th versus the Padres, 3-for-4, 2 homers, 3 RBIs. July 1st versus the Padres, that monster game where they won 23-3, 3 homers, 8 RBIs, 4 runs scored. July 3rd versus the Cardinals, 0-2. July 4th versus the Cardinals, 0-3. July 5th versus Cardinals, 1-4 with a run. So the funny thing is, Swanson's been batting 8th and 9th all season long. He's having these big games for the Cubs where he's carried them in these 2 series. But like I said, it's a little bit catching fire at the right time in those 2 series, where we know the New York Mets rotation isn't that great. And also San Diego, their back end of their rotation is banged up, and it's patched together for the majority of the season. So with those factors, and Swanson before those 2 series not really doing much this season, definitely a hitter I would sell this week. And the final hitter is Kevin McConaughey of the Detroit Tigers. McConaughey, he is having a good rookie season, but he's a guy I think a little bit overrated in fantasy baseball, where he's not going to show a lot of power, he's not going to drive in a lot of runs. I know batting average, on base, and runs scored, he's going to bring Feronis, though. 7 homers, 31 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, 55 runs scored, a 284 average, and a 395 on base. And he was a shortstop in the minor leagues, but he's been playing third base is the majors, is McConaughey. And like I said, he's a good prospect, one of the top prospects he was coming into the year, in the top 10 in all Major League Baseball. But he's a guy, like I said, I think he's a little bit overrated in fantasy baseball. More points leagues than those roto leagues. He's not going to get you tons of points. Like I said, if he's not hitting home runs or driving in a lot of runs in those points leagues, it's not going to amount to a much. Where roto leagues, he's definitely solid for that, is Kevin McConaughey. July 1st at the Yankees, 1-for-5, a homer, an RBI, 2 runs scored. July 2nd at the Rangers, 2-for-4. July 4th at the Rangers, 0-for-3. And July 5th at the Rangers, 2-for-4 with a run. So like I said, he's a good prospect. He's playing good baseball, especially with a 395 on base percentage is definitely impressive for a rookie, meaning he has a good eye, knows how to work the count, and all that stuff. But like I said, in those points leagues, he's not going to get you tons of points. At times, where the points come in with the homers and the RBIs, especially that he's kind of a singles hitter as well as McConaughey. Like I said, he's a good talent, but definitely someone they're ranking a little bit too high in fantasy baseball right now, and I think you could get a solid starting pitcher for him. So that's a few hitters I look to sell and trade for Week 16 of the fantasy baseball season.